The Entrepreneurial Journey podcast. We're talking business and building a culture that's kick-ass. Where we make it happen, grab your seat, let's have a blast. At the Entrepreneurial Journey podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the Entrepreneurial Journey podcast. Today I have Ken Davies with me, who is a fascinating character. Ken is the managing director of GSE Media Limited. Hello, Ken. How are you?
Good, Rebecca. Here we are on Bank Holiday Monday doing this because it's the only time we're both going to fit this in, isn't it? So it's worth doing that.
I know. I don't know about you, but I'm recording a ton of content today because it's going to be quiet and the emails are quiet. What are you up to apart from doing this on a Bank Holiday Monday?
Exactly that. I've got 3 calls lined up. I see bank holidays as kind of opportunities to do that, to catch up on a few things I've not been able to do. My wife doesn't see it that way.
No.
So I've got to go to the tip at some point as well. But I'm going to go to the tip in the middle of these pre-planned recorded conversations I've got to have all day as well.
Well, you must be quite in demand. And I don't know, because I found you, I came across you because I have become obsessed with a podcast that you do called Fred the Head.
Yeah.
Now, Fred the Head is not your day job. Your day job is running GSE Media. So tell me about GSE Media first, and then we'll get on to Fred the Head.
Right. Well, GSE Media is the business I've always run. I've run GSE Media since 2013. Essentially, a little bit of background. I, ages ago, at the start of 2000, stopped working for other people. So I set up my own business in the year 2000. It was a recruitment company, executive search business, because I'd done tons and tons of recruitment in the past for companies, with companies, as part of their senior management team. Wasn't overly impressed with the services I got on the recruitment side. So I had the opportunity to leave the business I was with and set up my own business. Never done that before.
Right.
But I set up this recruitment company and I ran that recruitment company successfully for about 13 years. But weirdly, kind of oddly, we were doing work for some fairly big businesses by that time. And a couple of them had mentioned to me, we really struggle to find young engineers and people just coming out of college and university and things like that, which are essentially the next generation of the talent that we need. So one of those companies, Airbus, said to me, why don't you think about how we might be able to improve that? So I did. And one of the things we came up with was running a big event called the Graduate and Apprentice Engineer Show, where we got all the big employers together and all the students who were looking for their new first jobs within that kind of STEM sector. And we ran that as an event, and it was a big success. And that was back in 2013. So I suddenly became an event organizer and producer. So, so I was asked to run this big recruitment fair, big success. That was back in 2013. So suddenly I was an event producer. And I enjoyed it more than recruitment because I found recruitment a little bit predatory. I was taking one person for a company and putting it into another company and sending them an invoice. After 13 years of doing that, I was quite keen to develop into something else. So because of the success of that event that we ran, and I'm about to run its 12th edition in November this year, we suddenly started doing events. And we thought, well, actually, events are a really interesting space and getting our arms around lots of people, getting them to one place. So I ended up running lots and lots and lots of events, and I still do. So my day job essentially is dreaming up clever events and running them all over, kind of around the world. So that's what GSE Media does. And that's what I do. That is what I generally do on a day-to-day basis.
Right. Okay. So I came across you because you run a podcast called Fred the Head.
Yeah.
Which I got really quite obsessed about, Ken.
Good. That's the idea.
A lot of people have, yeah, definitely. And I suspect, did you start it because of lockdown and all your events stopped? Or how did it come about?
Kind of, in the sense of those two things. There was an element of synchronicity about those two things. Let me explain. We had moved, myself, my wife, and a family had moved to this tiny little village outside Burton called Newton Solney, kind of middle of nowhere, really, unless you know that area. And I'm interested just in the general history of the places I'm living, all those kind of things. And the history of Repton and Burton and those kind of places is long. It goes back to the Viking time and things like that. So I'm just generally interested in stuff like that. And I was researching some of the information about our... Have I still got you, Rebecca?
Yeah, you have. I thought I'd put my phone on. So far on this podcast, we have had my dog escaping, my internet going down, and my do not disturb switching itself off on my phone. But we're going to get there.
Don't worry. That's normal stuff. We were living in this place called Newton Solney. I was interested in the general history of what was going on and was just digging around, just having a look around. Came across this story from 50 years ago of a man whose body had been found about 200 yards away from where we lived, literally where our house was. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I wonder who he was. Wonder what happened there, because he was murdered. We think he was murdered in the sense of he was tied up and he was buried. And he didn't bury himself because he was dead at that stage. So I was intrigued by this, did some looking around to see what the answer was. There was no answer. So nobody knew who he was. Nobody still knows who he was. And very, very, very few people go missing and are never identified in the UK. 99.9999% of people who are killed, they're identified immediately.
Yeah.
Or they're identified by dental records, or they're identified by somebody who reports them being missing. Nothing of that nature happened to this poor man. So I think, oh, isn't that interesting? But like most normal people, I should have left it there.
Yes, it was that most normal people would have left it there, Ken.
I should have left it there. But then something odd happened. Went back to the office and I was telling someone in the office that I kind of knew reasonably well. I found this very weird case near where I live, and I knew the name of the man that had found this body. I said, well, I'd love to talk to him. And this man said, well, I know him. I know that guy. So you don't know him? I said, no, I do know him. And I can put you in contact with him. So this guy just happened to know the man who found this body 50 years ago and put me in contact with him. So one Friday afternoon, and I've been putting this off for weeks and weeks and weeks. So what do I say? What do I say to him? I've never done any of this kind of stuff before at that point. But eventually I just literally ran out of excuses. I've cleaned the office too many times. It was spotless. I had to do it. So with some encouragement from some of my workmates, they said, pick the phone up and make the call. So I picked the phone up and made the call and said, look, my name's Ken Davies. I know you 50 years ago on March the 6th, 1971, found a body. Can you tell me about it? I'm not weird. I'm a normal person. I've got a job. I'm not, just tell me. So he told me, and he was very good, actually, a man called David Nathan. And I ended up having quite a long conversation with him. And there were some of the things that he told me about it where just wasn't adding up. It wasn't adding up at all. And when I realised that actually access to the place where this person had been buried was so restricted, and it suddenly became like an Agatha Christie real life murder.
It is.
Who had a key to the conservatory or whatever? It was that kind of real life Agatha Christie. So then COVID happened. So I'd been busy just kind of making notes on all this stuff with no intention of making a podcast.
Right.
And then I'd had a lot, because I was just busy beavering my way through this, trying to solve it without telling anyone. And then COVID happened. No events were taking place anywhere for 2 years, effectively. So I thought, well, I either go mad or I really get under the wife's feet, or I try and do something with this murder and properly solve it. So, and I was a big listener to podcasts at the time. So I'd listened to all the classic, Serial and all that kind of stuff way back in 2014, 15. And thought, whoa, I wonder if I could do a podcast about the case as I'm investigating it in real time. So not when we finished, actually like a 2-weekly or a once a month update on what we've been doing in the previous month. And so we started that episode 1, I think, went out start of 2020.
Yeah.
And it just blew up. It just went mad.
It did, quite quickly.
Yeah, and people just latched. Everybody seems to love true crime. Nobody was doing anything. That probably helped. Everyone loves true crime.
But I've come to it in the past 2 months, Ken. It was my friend that recommended it to me. So, and I was finding excuses to put it on in my car just so I could listen to it.
Bless you, Rebecca. And the sad thing is, I'm way, way, way more famous for Fred the Head, for the mysterious case of Fred the Head, than anything I've ever done in the other 40 years or 35 years of my working life.
It's crazy, isn't it? Now, how has it impacted your business? Good or bad, or a mixture, do you think?
Definitely a mixture.
Right.
Definitely positives, definitely negatives.
Okay.
Firstly, it was fine when COVID was happening in a way, because it kept me sane and all that kind of stuff. But suddenly, of course, COVID stops, and all my old clients are saying, "Hey, you're running this event again. You're running that event again. We're doing this again." All this kind of stuff. And suddenly, everything's back on, full on again. But of course, I've also now, by this time, there are half a million people listening to the podcast.
Yeah.
Saying, when's the next episode? I thought we were getting one last Thursday.
Yeah.
Which is a big issue, because obviously I do want to keep it going, because we've got this huge community of people who are into it. But no one makes any money out of it. No. So there's literally, I don't charge, there's no Patreon things. I don't charge anyone for anything. There's no merch. Because it's about a dead person who got killed. I don't want to make any money on it. It's a policy decision I took years ago. No money gets made on this.
Yeah.
Ever. So, but I've got this massive demand for stuff. So, it just meant lots and lots of very long hours. Still means lots and lots of very long hours, and the ability to compartmentalize. So this has become the big thing for me, in the sense of I have to be extremely organized now. So I have to say, right, my week is divided into essentially 15 pieces.
Okay.
And I of which they're all 2.5 hours long. So, and literally, I've got a 2.5 start. I always start at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
So it's really like this. It's 7:30 till 9:30, 10 o'clock till 12:30, 2:30 to 5 o'clock.
Okay.
That's my working life every day. So I just fill those little compartments up with things. 90% of them are work things, but I get the odd compartment that I'll say, right, that's Fred compartment. So I just have to
Okay.
do it in an incredibly disciplined way.
That's a useful insight for most entrepreneurs, though, who are constantly, spinning 15 million plates at the same time. I like those little chunks of time to keep you on the straight and narrow.
Yeah.
And
It's really,
that,
really important for me to do that. In the
yeah,
sense of if I don't get what I want done in that 2.5 hours, I don't carry on. I move on to the next subject. Because, and I'm going to have to make that up in the next chunk that was dedicated to that particular subject. Because, like other entrepreneurs, I normally have 5 or 6 things happening at any one point in time,
yeah,
irrespective of Fred. And so I have to dedicate those chunks to those different things. But I don't make the mistake of, if I only get half of the stuff done in one chunk, carrying on to the second chunk with that
right.
subject. No, that subject's had its chunk. And the next time I go to it is the next chunk.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so has it, in terms of GSE Media, has it got you a higher profile for the business? Have you won clients because of the podcast?
No, it's awkward on that because
Right.
the weird thing is, clients find it completely independently of me and say, is this you?
Is this you?
And yeah, it is me. And I don't like to mix the two things.
Mm,
But it's a source of amusement with
mm,
clients, and most of my clients I know quite well, and it's a source of amusement. And people say, "Oh, you solved it," that kind of stuff. What it has done, which is a completely unexpected, is provided business opportunities I didn't foresee
okay.
because I didn't expect it would, uh, and and that's really because people have asked me to do their podcast now.
Ah, right.
Because I know how to do a podcast. I know how to develop podcasts, and how to, obviously, I've got a lot of followers, so I've got a successful podcast, but also the technology of podcasts and things like, some people like my voice. One of the things that was said to me, and I didn't know that.
You've got a great voice.
Bless
You
you.
do.
It's I didn't know that. No one had ever, in the 35 years before I did Fred the Head, ever come up to me randomly and say, "You've got a lovely voice."
You do. It's really soothing. And what I like about Thread Ahead is the pace at which you go is really measured.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know whether you've had that feedback before, but it's a lovely measured pace. It's great.
That's nice of you to say that. It's because I'm a bigger listener to podcasts, and
Mm,
but I'm quite critical of them. A lot of them I get bored by really quickly,
yeah,
and a lot of it is about the presentation. A lot of it is about the narrator. Uh,
yeah,
I need to feel the narrator uh, knows everything, and kind of. And this is a particular type of podcast, of course, because it's not just a new story every week. It's the
yeah.
same story every week, but with new bits to it every week, which is really quite a rare type of podcast.
It is. There's new characters every week, and boy, have you interviewed some characters.
I have,
I'm not,
I
I'm not
have,
going to name names.
and isn't it
Um,
amazing how people just open up though?
do you know, it's really beautiful. And I think that is testament to your skill as an interviewer. And also that actually most people are pretty decent
Yeah,
people and genuinely want to help find the answer to this conundrum. And some of them have had some pretty horrible things happen in their own lives that they've been really generous and sharing in order for you to get closer to the truth.
I was just amazed.
Yeah,
I'm not sure I'd be that open. If someone rang me up and said, tell me about your brother or something like that, I just
yeah,
wouldn't. You just wouldn't. It's a random person. But I have been amazed about that. I think it helps that I do spend quite a lot of time explaining why. That
yeah, you do.
this is someone who died. He's never been buried properly. He's never had a funeral. There will be family. They don't know.
Yeah.
So that helps. But you're right. I mean, people have been extraordinarily generous with their time and their opinions.
And I don't know about you, and I was going to ask you about podcasting because, yeah, it's a phenomenally successful podcast. The consistency of it and the production of it is all really good. And I think that's what keeps you coming back for more and more and more because you know what you're going to get, you know the standard that you're going to get.
Mm.
And what kind of businesses or people have approached you about their own podcasting? And
Uh,
and will you set up a separate business for that, or
it
how are
will
you
go
going to manage
through. It'll be through GSE Media, but it's.
that?
I mean, just companies that who I knew through other business activities are all kind of interested in podcasting. It's a really interesting kind of reach potential
Yeah,
in the sense of there's something about having someone talking in your brain through your ears, which
yeah,
is really powerful. If particularly if you if that narrator is someone that you kind of trust and delivers it in such a way that people find it interesting and easy to listen to. So what happened is a number of companies who I knew through my completely other activities of event
mm,
management uh, listened to my podcast and said, "Hey, we've been thinking about doing a podcast. Uh, would you do it for us?"
right,
And because we like your style, we like the way you talk, we like the way you interview people because you do it in a semi-intelligent way, uh, and so that's led to completely unexpected business opportunities based on that, really.
yeah.
And
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 didn't you
and
start a radio show as well, Ken?
that's just hobby stuff. Someone
Oh,
asked me to do a radio show, and I said,
right.
well, you may have picked up already. I can
Uh-huh.
talk.
Yeah, I know, but yeah, there's always a purpose for you chatting, though. It's never just
Oh, you'd be
superfluous.
surprised, Rebecca.
Right, okay. All right, maybe I'm being too generous.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend you went anywhere near the radio show.
Okay, all right. Well, I haven't tried because I was too obsessed with the podcast. Now, when's the next episode coming out, Ken? I'm
Well,
eagerly awaiting this, and so is my best friend.
oh,
She's sent me a question, by the way, and she'll kill me.
I'll definitely answer anything. When's next? Well, the reason there hasn't been one since
Uh-huh.
at the start of July is,
Yeah.
but there will be one in a couple of weeks' time, is
Right.
because I'm organising the first Fred get together,
Oh,
which is
right.
next Saturday, Saturday the 2nd of September. Uh,
Okay.
75 people from all over the world coming, from
Brilliant.
Australia, America, Holland, Ireland, all over the UK, to
Oh, that's
Burton,
amazing.
where Fred was buried, killed, and we're having a day on Fred. I, and I thought, oh yeah, wouldn't that be a nice idea? And then suddenly 75 people say they're going to come, and I've got to organise a mini. I mean, I run events, so I've got no excuse. But so yeah, I've got that to do, and it's been a no, it hasn't been a pain. It's been lovely, but it's taken some organisation.
Yeah, hard work. So my friend's question, all
Yeah,
right, and if you're listening to this and you've not listened to Fred the Head, just go and search it out because it's brilliant.
it's called The Mysterious
Um,
Case of Fred the Head. It's available on wherever you get your podcasts.
yeah, it is. So her question is, we both think it's the Scout guy. Okay,
Okay.
that's the conclusion we've come to. She thinks it was Frank Kunn. I think it was Matthew Jackson that did it.
Yeah. These are all perfectly plausible explanations. By the
I know.
way, of which the police have never come up with any of these names. And the police gave up on this years ago.
I know. They did. What amazed me is they didn't question anybody at the mill. It's
Never tracked Frank down. Any of that?
no, no. It's crazy, and I know the police can't comment on it, and you've asked them and all the rest of it, but that just raises suspicions. But yeah, we've got some very interesting sort of spy ring type theories.
Yeah.
Which have come out, and we've learned a lot about history as well. I knew nothing about the stuff going on in Hungary or Czechoslovakia at the time. Didn't know anything about that, so that was all fascinating.
It is a social history. I mean, talking to people about what the world was like in 1970. I was around 1970. You wouldn't have been. I was.
I was one. I was one.
Okay.
Then.
Okay. I definitely was, but but too young to really know anything. But actually going back and talking to people who were around at that time, it was a very, very different place. You know, they say the past is a different country. It really was a different country, and it's been really fascinating from a social history perspective to just interview all these millions of people about that very, very tight time window of 69, 70, 71.
Yeah, definitely. So I've got two questions. One, where are you taking GSE Media? Where's that heading in terms of its business future?
Well, certainly there's developmental stuff on the podcast side, no question about that. And one of the other things I'm working on, because I have got quite into the podcast technology field, and I do have an advantage now, having done it for 4 years effectively.
Yeah.
I'm quite interested in developing a podcast network, so I'm working on that at the moment as well, which is actually in a very specific space where lots of podcasters come together in a network. And the problem for podcasters is monetization, and they don't know how to monetize it. And one little podcast is never going to be monetized. No. But actually, if you put them together as a group, as a network, and actually sell or look to monetize the totality rather than individuals. So I've got this idea, and which is quite well developed now, which I think by the end of the year will be a reality, which is to create in one specific space a podcast network where we can sell the listenership, which through GSE Media, to big brands. And I've done a lot of selling to big brands. But as a totality rather than lots of individual podcasts. So creating the podcast network is definitely happening. My involvement with other podcasts on behalf of other people and maybe one more that I produce is definitely going to happen. So we're going to, essentially the business is going to be more media. So GSE Media suggests it's involved in media. It will be more involved in media in the course of the next 5 years than it has been before, which primarily be involved in events. So that's where that's the direction of travel at GSE Media.
And did you, when you first started the Fred the Head, did you foresee any of that happening? No.
And I think that's, that is a lesson in the sense of always be open to opportunity. I could have just plowed my way doing loads and loads of events and, that'd been fine. But actually, I was developing, unbeknownst to me, some skills and experiences that opened up other avenues.
Yeah.
And I think from a kind of an entrepreneurial perspective, the lesson really was, don't be constrained by what you've always done.
Yeah.
Take your kind of skill sets and look at what's happening in the world and whether what's happening in the world can play into some of the skills and experiences and abilities that you have. Particularly as an individual, because essentially GSE Media is me and I pull in lots of things. So for small businesses, I think it's a good lesson to, the world's changing all the time, but without you even realizing it, so are your skills, and you can use those skills in these other areas.
I totally agree. Our podcast is on its 159th episode.
Wow.
And I started it because I just really like talking to entrepreneurs and why they started the business and where they're up to. I'm just really nosy. And I like interesting people. And people have said, well, do you earn any money from it? Well, no, I don't, because like you say, too small for anybody to want to sponsor it. However, it has won me clients
Yeah, it will do.
because,
It will do.
yeah, people get to know you and go, oh, right, well, she is really interested in that. Or, they just feel a closer connection to you, definitely.
I
You're
think
right.
also
So,
it's a means of differentiation, really. I mean,
yeah,
everybody, it's hard to differentiate yourself as a small
yeah,
business, and it's hard to, provide another opportunity for clients to look at you and think, actually, this person is a bit different.
yeah,
And anything you can do, I think, as an entrepreneur, which does just raise your profile a little bit, maybe show you in a slightly different field or doing something slightly different that just makes you more memorable. Particularly if through that you're displaying some of the skills that some of these clients might want,
yeah,
i.e., great at interviewing people, clearly he's intelligent, all that kind of stuff. If you can use those kind of platforms to do that, it can only be advantageous.
yeah. I think so. I think so. Who do you think killed Fred the Head?
Uh, I have no idea.
Right.
Honestly, I'm trying to be neutral now, in the sense of the way I'm working this is I want to find out who he was first. I'm
Yeah.
not overly trying at the moment to find out who did it.
Yeah.
It's impossible to avoid that question, but
Yeah.
primarily I'm trying to focus and always have tried to focus on who is he, because if I can find out who is he, I've got 10 times the better chance of working out who killed him.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
obviously we've identified at least four potential perpetrators that
Yeah.
no one had even thought about before we started the podcast, really. uh, and you just can't avoid that, but I don't know. In a way, I'm not even sure any of them that we know about yet killed him.
Oh, maybe not. Do you, have you got a feeling as to who it is?
Yeah,
Right.
I
Who
mean,
do you think it is?
yeah, we've narrowed these things down a lot. I mean, without giving too much away, the guy from the Isle of Man is we know he's missing. We know he's
Yeah.
exactly the same physically.
Yeah.
Never seen again. Goes missing at the right time.
Yeah.
He's gay. We always think
Yeah.
there's definitely uh, an aspect of that being part of the victim's potential makeup. Uh, you know, do I think do I th- hand on heart, do I think it's him? I think there's about a 25% chance it's him.
Hmm. Yeah.
Uh,
I think that's fair.
but in it, we've done 43 episodes. I'm 100% sure there'll be 100 episodes of Fred. We'll probably know a lot more by episode 86.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. We will.
the great thing is we've discovered potential explanations that we just did not exist before the podcast existed.
I already think you've done justice to the man's memory.
Oh, thanks for that.
Just Well, I do, just by the sheer tenacity of what you've been doing. No stone has gone unturned. You have gone down some incredible rabbit holes, Ken.
I know.
Sometimes the listeners are going, what's he doing
Yeah,
exactly?
I know. I know. And the thing is, until I've literally found the carrot at the bottom of the rabbit hole,
Yeah,
I have to keep going down it. And I work on the basis of, and this is a bit selfish, but it's my podcast. I
yeah,
decide. And you can either come with me or you can say this bloke's a nutcase. Uh, but it's the only way I can really satisfy myself there's nothing down that rabbit hole,
yeah,
is to get to the
yeah,
end of it.
yeah,
Because it might be,
totally.
because someone killed him. We know that.
Yeah,
Someone got
yeah.
away with murder. We know that. And so I've just got to go out down every one.
I love it. I love it. Right, my last question.
Yeah.
If your business had a personality or a character, how would you describe it?
Flipping it. That's an interesting one. This is going to sound a bit odd, but my business is me, really, and so many. But I will explain it a bit more than that. So many small businesses really are just manifestations of the owner, the person who runs them, and it can't be anything else. You know,
No.
you are who you are, and therefore you either win business and are successful based on what skills you have and what personality you have, or you don't.
Yep.
So, and everybody always describes me as a Labrador,
right?
Because I'm tenacious and I'm loyal and I'm pleasant. Don't bite you, and so I think now Labradors aren't particularly what's the word, entrepreneurial. I am quite an entrepreneurial person. I see lots of opportunity.
You do.
But I do follow them through. So I am tenacious in that way. But I think, I'd like to think GSE Media is a Labrador. Cool. I've never been asked that question, you see, Rebecca, and it's probably a rubbish answer. But yeah, I'd be quite happy if my business was a Labrador.
And that's lovely. Would it be a black Labrador?
Oh yeah, it'd be a black Labrador. Yeah.
Yeah.
And but it's one of my issues as a business owner, and a lot of business owners suffer from this, I think, and it's probably not a particularly PC way of expressing it, but I'm going to say it anyway, is I suffer from idea Tourette's.
Right.
So many people I know who are not in business say, oh, I'd love to run my own company. I just can't think of an idea. I mean, everyone says that to me. Whereas my problem is, I think of too many.
Yeah.
I mean, I have one a week. And most of them, I think that's a great idea. That's a brilliant idea.
Do you know, before I ran my own business, I was the same. I didn't know what I would do. And weirdly enough, my first business was also a recruitment business because I've been in the industry a while. And but once you're in business, you're absolutely right. I too have idea Tourette's as well. My content people for social media are like, can you produce content? I can produce content all day long because I've got ideas for this, that, and the everything. It's keeping it focused.
That's the key.
That's the key. And I think once you've found your focus and your niche, and it usually is what you love. I mean, you found a need with clients, supplying what they needed with the people and the events, and then you found this other thing that you're really passionate about and you happen to be really good at. And as an entrepreneur, you can go, yeah, all right, I can add that bit to my business now. And that's what I love about it. I just think it's fab.
But I think you're right. I think the key is, because there is a danger of becoming scattergun. Yeah. And it's very important, I think, that people give freedom to them ideas to develop, but they then are fairly hard. As they say when people write books, kill your babies.
Yeah.
In the sense of your things you really think, oh yeah, no, you've got the 24 hours a day, and you're probably you might, even if you work 17 of them, there'll never be time for that. You've just got to put that to one side. But I think if you're actually coming up with lots of ideas, that's the most difficult thing. If you're coming up with lots of ideas, at least you've got some choices. At least you've got some choices to say, I'm going to focus on that and that. And maybe every year you say, well, there's space for one more, and you do next year, there's space for another one, and then just build things that way. But always keep moving, always keep changing, and always keep developing. But try and keep it, as you say, focused.
Brilliant. Great place to end. Thank you so much, Ken. And I am so looking forward to the next episode.
Thanks, Rebecca. That was really, really enjoyable.
Pleasure.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Did you know at TriCrest, we've built a kick-ass culture coach and consultant program? So if you're a business coach or consultant and you're looking for something new add to your toolbox, or even escape the 9 to 5, join us at our next event. Links in the information on the podcast. See you there.
The Entrepreneurial Journey podcast. We're talking business and building a culture that's kick-ass.